Jai Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Girivaradhari Jaya Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Haribo, Haribo, Nitai Gaura Haribo. Shri Radha Radhanath ki, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Shri Giraj Govardhana Hare ki, Shri Prabhupada ki, Shri Shantai Gaur Premanandi. Om Jnanatimidandasya Gnananganashalakaya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayamrupakadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanshakapatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So thank you all so much for this opportunity to serve. Today we're going to discuss chapter 29 of Krishna book. Krishna book is written by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, and it's based on the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And this chapter is called the Rasa Dance. So I pray for all your blessings to do justice to this class so that we can have better understanding of the Lord's teachings and pastimes, so we can serve Him better. So we'll start by reading. In Srimad Bhagavatam it is stated that the Rasa Dance took place on the full moon night of the Sharat season. So Krishna wanted the Rasa Dance, in particular, to happen on this full moon. Sharat Purnim, or the Sharat full moon, happens at the beginning of Kartik. And for the reasons of many other wonderful pastimes that happened in Krishna's 7th year on this planet, the Rasa Dance couldn't take place on that Sharat Purnim when he was 7 years old. So the following year, Sharad Purnima only comes once a year. Krishna saw that the opportunity had come for the Rasa dance to take place. The full moon night of Ashwin, so Ashwin is the month that precedes Kartik month. So this full moon, although it comes at the beginning of Kartik, it belongs to the previous month. So it's called the full moon night of Ashwin. There's one new moon and one full moon per Vedic month. The full moon night of Ashwin is called Sharad Purnim. It appears from the statements of Srimad Bhagavatam that Krishna had to wait another year for such a moon before enjoying the Rasa dance with the gopis. At the age of 7 years, he lifted Govardhan hill. Therefore, the Rasa dance took place during his 8th year. So we're going to establish this very clearly at the beginning of this class, because as Krishna is 8 years old, so the gopis are about the same age. And it's very important that we understand, that the sincere reader, the sincere listener understands that the exchange of emotions between the gopis and Krishna was not the same as ordinary adults or even teenagers. Right? It was not on that same level of lust that we would expect in this material world. This was an exchange of love between the Lord and his devotees, pure love, and therefore we can understand that just from their ages, the age of complete innocence. So Krishna's platform of existence is not like this material world of ours, where goodness, passion and ignorance permeates everything, and that allows lust to exist. The platform that Krishna exists on is called Vishuddha Sattva, and it is the purest goodness. Lust can't exist there, and certainly it doesn't exist between him and his devotees. It's the example that we can take, that Srila Prabhupada gives us. It's like light from the sun and darkness. They just can't coexist together. So that impossibility is there. Lust just can't exist wherever Krishna is. It's just like that. The problem is, of course, our perspectives are only colored by what we know. It's only colored by these 3 modes. And that's why we see it like this. And therefore, our acharyas keep commenting that we have to go through the first 9 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam before we get to these pastimes in the 10th canto. And the reason why we go through reading Krishna books systematically before we come here. So with that understanding that we've gotten from all the scriptures up to now, by our practices of sadhana, by the blessings and the guidance of our spiritual masters, blessings that we even invoke now, we can get the right understanding without those tainted perspectives affecting it. So we'll carry on reading. From the Vedic literature, it appears that when a theatrical actor dances among many dancing girls, the group dance is called a rasa dance. So that's the official definition. So when Krishna saw this special full moon, he remembers that the gopis had prayed. They had prayed to the goddess Katyayani, Krishna's energy, to have Krishna as their husband. And he thought that this full moon was suitable for the dance that would establish that to them. Then their desire to have Krishna as their husband would be fulfilled. So immediately we can understand from this that this rasa dance is an exchange between the Lord and his devotees. They prayed for something and they had a relationship with him that allowed for that to be fulfilled. That was their particular rasa that they could enjoy with him. And as the Supreme Lord, he was most mercifully fulfilling it. And Srila Prabhupada says that the Lord is called Bhagavan Api, right, in the Srimad Bhagavatam verses that correlate with this, which helps us understand that it is exactly that which is being established, that it's God and his devotees. Right? A relationship, again, that cannot be corrupted with any emotions of this world. Bhagavan Api. So another point that's invoked with the word Bhagavan is that Bhagavan means the possessor of all 6 opulences in full. That means that Krishna has everything, and he doesn't need anything from these girls. And that's another important point. So him meeting up with them has nothing to do with any desire that he could want from anyone. The Lord as Atmaram, he who is satisfied with himself, doesn't need anything from anyone else. He was mercifully fulfilling the prayer of his devotees. Therefore, Bhagavan Api signifies that this dance is not like the ordinary dancing of young boys and young girls. And then Srila Prabhupada further states that the platform that we were talking about, Vishuddha Sattva, it's also called Yogamayam Upashritaha in the verses from Srimad Bhagavatam, which means that it's on the platform of Yogamaya, whereas the dancing of ordinary boys and girls is on the platform of Mahamaya, illusion. So on the platform of Yogamaya, there's complete clarity of consciousness, the purest consciousness that there could be. And Mahamaya, Yogamaya is clarity, spiritual clarity, and Mahamaya is illusion. They're very different. And the analogy that Prabhupada uses, it's a very nice one, is that of gold and iron. So the dancing on the platform of Yogamaya and the dancing on the platform of Mahamaya may appear the same way that iron and gold are both metals. But we know there's a very big difference between gold and iron. And so there's that same huge difference between the dancing. The problem is, of course, our perspectives covered by the material nature doesn't allow us to always see that. It certainly doesn't allow those people who comment negatively on it to see that. And then Srila Prabhupada says that the difference is appreciated by the great Vaishnavas. They can understand because they know the difference between lust and love. Their perspective is pure. They understand. And therefore we, who are not yet at that level, we understand through them. We see through their eyes. That's how we can see these. We are seeing these pastimes through Srila Prabhupada's eyes, his purports, right? His Krishna book. So he explained before the difference between lust and love. Right? Srila Prabhupada says that lust is for me and love is for Krishna. Okay. So then we may question, well, we know that Krishna wants to fulfill this desire of the gopis for them, but the gopis want that desire for themselves, right? They were praying to Katyani to have Krishna as their husband. So was that a selfish desire? Well, Prabhupada says here that they rushed towards the spot of the rasa dance when they heard Krishna's flute, because they had the transcendental desire to satisfy Krishna. So even their prayers were not for themselves. They wanted to become the wives of Krishna. They wanted to have Krishna as their husband to please him. And we'll see a bit further on more about that, exactly why they in particular had to fulfill this desire of him. So this is the platform of the gopis, where they have no desire for themselves, even if it appears to be so. And Srila Prabhupada comments that on the material platform or in the material world, everyone or everything has a personal motivation. And that's what's so different from the gopis, who have no motivation for themselves. On the material platform, when the servant serves a master, he's trying to satisfy not the senses of the master, but his own senses. And the servant would not serve the master if the payment stopped. Everybody knows that. Nobody works for nothing. Right? So the servant engages himself in the service of the master just to satisfy his own senses. This is a reality. And we can see that in all relationships, right, if we're honest. Right? Even if the relationships are not necessarily about getting a wage, but there's always some kind of personal benefit that we're getting from it. We wouldn't usually be involved in it if it wasn't. But on the spiritual platform, however, the servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead serves Krishna without payment, without any kind of remuneration, and he continues his service in all conditions. Right? So therefore we see from this the definitions of devotional service being causeless and unceasing, without any cause, and it never stops under any circumstances. Ahoitiki apratihata, described in Srimad Bhagavatam. And that is the difference between Krishna consciousness and material consciousness. So now Srila Prabhupada is explaining that point that we had already touched on in the beginning, that Krishna enjoyed the rasa dance with the gopis when he was 8 years old, and many of the gopis were about the same age, but they were already married. This is because it was a custom in those days for girls to be married at a very young age. They were obviously very mature. I often joke with Sarika that even us as youngsters 20 years back, a lot more mature than the youngsters of today. So it's like that, right? They were extremely more mature, so they could take such commitments. But even though they were married, right, at the same time, they continued to hope that Krishna would be their husband. Their attitude towards Krishna then was of paramour love, Srila Prabhupada says. The loving affairs of Krishna with the gopis are called Parakiya Rasa. That's the name of this paramour love. where a married man desires another wife or a wife desires another husband. So if we examine the statement closely, Srila Prabhupada is actually giving us a hint of this kind of paramour love. That whereas we would think of this in terms of a mundane affair, the gopis actually are committed to Krishna and they want him as their husband, not just as somebody that they can have this kind of relationship that's not looked upon very favorably in the material world. And Srila Prabhupada comments on that Krishna is actually the husband of everyone because he's the supreme enjoyer. So that's how we understand it. The gopis want to bring Krishna the greatest pleasure. The greatest pleasure, the greatest exchange that a devotee can have with the Supreme Lord. This is the highest rasa called Madhurya rasa. And in that exchange, they are giving up everything for him. And no other rasa actually expresses love like that. We understand a little bit of that ideal in this world, this unselfish love that is spoken about in poetry and in novels, and which doesn't exist on this platform. We have no understanding of it whatsoever. Right? But it does exist in the spiritual world. And the gopis are uniquely positioned in order to express this for Krishna because they're not ordinary women. We're also going to come to that point. Right? They're Krishna's own energies. Right? So it's again absolutely nothing like that of the material world. They only have one love and only one commitment in their lives, and that's Krishna. Their commitment is not even to their parents or to their children or anything else. Right? This is the unique feature of that. So we can understand that this parakya rasa that we're going to be discussing here, it's not just a physical affair by which people are satisfying their lust. It's the ideal of unselfish love that we have absolutely no experience of here, which is strong enough to cross all boundaries, every obstacle that they could face. That's what this parakya rasa is. It is ever existent in Goloka Vrindavan in the spiritual sky. In the material world, parakya rasa is abominable. There are many relationships with Krishna, master and servant, friend and friend, parent and son. But out of all, the parakya rasa is considered to be the topmost. The devotee sacrifices absolutely everything for Krishna, including their reputations. That's something that's very extraordinary, because the reputations of all the other devotees of Krishna is increased because of their love, isn't it? Maria Yashoda is extolled for her love. The cowherd boys are praised by Shukadev Goswami for their love. The gopis, they're castigated for theirs. And they still express it. This material world is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world, like the reflection of a tree on the bank of a reservoir of water. So, just like the tree is upside down, when we see it in a reflection, the roots are at the top, the branches, the roots are at the top and the branches are at the bottom. This parakya rasa has the opposite connotation in this world. So it is not endorsed at all. Right? It's opposite, and therefore Srila Prabhupada calls it abominable. When pervertedly reflected in this material world, it has the upside down effect. Therefore, when people imitate the rasa dance of Krishna with the gopis, they simply enjoy the perverted, abominable reflection of the transcendental parakya rasa, and so they get the opposite results. So, Srila Prabhupada actually says that it's like drinking the most deadly poison. No one should ever imitate this, even in their dreams or in their imaginations. When Krishna, the Supreme Enjoyer, Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Shri Giraj Govardhan Hari ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. When Krishna, the Supreme Enjoyer, again, Srila Prabhupada is referring to Krishna like this, the Supreme Enjoyer, meaning again, the ultimate husband of the gopis, of all living entities actually. Desire to enjoy the company of the gopis on that full moon night, then the full moon appeared in the sky. Right? And Prabhupada makes an interesting comment. He says that this full moon of the Sharad season is still appreciated till today, and people unfortunately don't see it in the spiritual sense, but they go to look at the Taj Mahal in the light of the moon. And that's it's just a point about how beautiful this moon is. And then he gives another analogy to describe it, that when it rises in the east, it's very poetic. It tinges everything with a reddish color, and the whole sky, it looks like it's smeared with red kumkum, right? The powder that married women wear. So Srila Prabhupada says that a husband long separated from his wife returns home and he decorates the face of his wife with that kumkum. So we can see that there's a theme of longing here, right? Even with the moon rising in the sky. How Krishna and the gopis are longing for this moment. They waited for this year, and now it's occurring. When Krishna began to blow his flute, the gopis all over Vrindavan became enchanted. Their attraction to the vibration of the flute increased 1,000 times because of this full moon, right? This full moon that's conveying this longing. And they left all their respective engagements, whatever they were doing, milking cows, cooking, feeding the children, the husbands. They left everything and they proceeded to the spot where Krishna was standing, the very famous Vamshi Vatri. Right? Vamshi is Krishna's flute, and Vati is a banyan tree. It's a banyan tree under which Krishna was playing his flute to call the gopis. So they were so excited that they wanted to dress up, they wanted to put on makeup, but they were in such a rush that they put it on all wrong. So we can understand what a rush that was, right? For girls to not put on their makeup or dress properly. This is how much they desired to join Krishna. And so they completely disregarded all their guardians, right? The fathers, the brothers, the husbands, everyone who was trying to hold them back. Their love for Krishna was completely unbridled. And so Srila Rupa Goswami captures this in a very famous verse, wherein one gopi advises another, "My dear friend, if you desire to enjoy the company of material society, friendship and love, then please do not go to see that smiling boy Govinda who is standing on the bank of the Yamuna and playing his flute, his lips brightened by the beams of the full moonlight." And Prabhupada says that Srila Rupa Goswami indirectly instructs that one who has been captivated by the beautiful smiling face of Krishna has lost all attraction for material enjoyments. And this is a test of advancement in Krishna consciousness. A person who is advancing loses all interest in material activities and personal sense gratification. And that is very different from abandoning one's duties and using Krishna consciousness as an excuse. There's the dichotomy, and we have to be very careful about that. Right? When we know that we're advancing spiritually, we're losing taste, not losing interest because we don't want to do our duties. So when we lose that taste, it's a natural thing. And with that is a concomitant attraction to Krishna, this attraction that's making the gopis to leave everything behind. Some of the gopis were factually detained from going to Krishna by their husbands. Right? They were locked within their rooms. And they began to meditate upon his transcendental form by closing their eyes. They had captured Krishna's form within their minds. And so they proved to be the greatest yogis. Because in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna is explaining this process of mystic yoga, he explains that the best yogi, yoginam api sarvesham madgaten antaratmana, is the one who has captured Krishna in their mind, who is completely focused on Krishna alone and nothing else. So the gopis had achieved that. Right? That's real yoga. It's not, like Srila Prabhupada says, gymnastic procedures, levitating, all the other things that people think it is. And we have to ask ourselves, why would the most advanced civilization literally just teach people how to do tricks? There must be something more to this process. Right? That process is actually being able to situate oneself on the same platform of God, on the same platform of eternity, knowledge and bliss. Not becoming God, but realizing one's own qualities as God. That's actually something worth having. So what's the result of this real yoga? So Srila Prabhupada explains that in this material world, there's two kinds of activities. We either engage in sinful activities and we get bad results, or we engage in pious activities and we enjoy good results. And that suffering or that enjoyment comes through the material nature. Now, the gopis, some of the gopis were actually still subject to good and bad results. Right? So how do we understand this? The gopis who are eternal associates of Krishna in the spiritual world, they're all of Krishna's own internal potency, like we started off by explaining. They're from his own energy. They're eternally liberated. This energy is Hladini Shakti. So they're all expansions of Radharani. But when Krishna comes to the material world, other persons who have been desiring to associate with Krishna as gopis, who have been coming therefore from the human platform, they get that chance to take their birth in those pastimes. Right? So the gopis who were detained, they were actually coming from that status ordinary beings. And as such, they still had some reactions, some good and some bad reactions that needed to be cleared before they had the opportunity to associate with Krishna like the gopis who are of his internal energy. So it's said by Srila Prabhupada that they were freed from their sinful reactions because of their constant meditation on Krishna and their severely painful yearnings. Right? They were actually physically affected by not being able to see him. And then the ecstasy of love on the other side ended all their reactions to their pious activities. So their pain that they were going through was destroying all their sinful reactions, and the relish of their emotions for Krishna was destroying all their pious activities, the results of their pious activities. Because both have to be destroyed in order for us to achieve Krishna. We're often taught that we should do good, right? And we don't think that getting good results is actually bad. But like Srila Prabhupada says, that we will be subject to birth and death either by our pious activities or our sinful activities. So both have to come to an end. Right? So Krishna tells Arjuna this in the 9th chapter, the most confidential knowledge. And it's confidential because it's even beyond that understanding of goodness. Shubha Ashubha Palair. Your Shubha, your auspicious results, and your Ashubha, your inauspicious results, Palair, must both be destroyed. And this is what Krishna wants for all of us, so that we don't go through repeated birth and death. So this is what happened with these gopis. They were meditating on Krishna so deeply that they got freed of all of that, and they were able to attain the state that Krishna's internal energies were experiencing. They gave up their material bodies and they immediately went to the spiritual world. So this is an interesting point for Maharaj Parikshit, and he clarifies this for all of us. He asks Shukadev Goswami, after hearing that the gopis who had just focused on Krishna were being freed from the cycle of birth and death, he asks, the gopis did not know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They didn't have that understanding, otherwise they wouldn't even think of expressing love like this for him. And they just accepted him as a paramour, right, as another boy. So how is it possible for them to get free from material contamination by thinking of a paramour? Right? Because it opens up the idea to people that you can think of any person you love and you're also going to get free from the cycle of birth and death. Right? Obviously you all have a bit more understanding, so you wouldn't make that mistake, but there's a lot of interpretations going on out there. And particularly this comes from the idea that people have that we can be on the same platform of God by spiritual realization. We know that we are qualitatively one with Him. We have the same properties of eternity, knowledge and bliss, but we have it in minute quantities, and His expression of it is unlimited. So we are the small Brahman and He is the great Brahman, the Para Brahman. So there's that difference, oneness and difference. We can never equal Him. So the result of thinking of Him can never be the same as thinking of anyone else. Right? But people who still, even to this day, we know that people tell us that we can become Brahman. What are they saying? You can become God, right? They would have this idea that you could actually elevate someone to the status of God and then think about them and be liberated. Right? This is the dangerous mentality of Kali Yuga. So it said here that Parikshit Maharaj, he was apprehending the future dangerous condition of blind followers of demoniac imitators, and therefore asked this question. Unfortunately, it's recorded in Srimad Bhagavatam. And then Srila Prabhupada makes a point that even thinking of the demigods cannot compare with thinking of Krishna. We have absolute respect for them, for the devatas, but we can't allow in that respect that they get compared to Krishna, because then the door is open for everyone to get compared to Krishna, right? Because this is what we do. Humans, particularly in Kali Yuga, we're always pushing the envelope. And so no one is compared to Krishna. He's incomparable. Right? So then Shukadev Goswami answers Maharaj Parikshit. First he chastises him, like the good spiritual master that he is, in saying that I've already answered this question before. Because this topic is always coming up. And we may also wonder, every discussion we come up with this topic, these Mayavadis. And it's important because we need to have it emphasized. We have so much of that desire to be the supreme that you get any kind of idea from the outside that enforces that, and we may actually start to believe it. So repeatedly it comes up in all the discussions. It's come up before, Shukadev Goswami says, but he understands again that Maharaj Parikshit is bringing it up for emphasis, especially in this very sensitive context, right, where people think that they can experience the same kind of situation, Krishna and the gopis together. So it's exceptionally important that we get the right understanding here. Shukadev Goswami then reminded Maharaj Parikshit about the salvation of Shishupal. Right? We remember Shishupal. He was so envious of Krishna that he could only think of Krishna. It is very funny. We do tend to think of people more in envy than we think of people that we like. So this is the condition of Shishupal. He was always thinking of Krishna. So because of that, as soon as he was killed, he was thinking of Krishna, right? Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam. So what happened? He got at least liberation in the Sayujya Mukti. He couldn't get into the spiritual planets where devotional service prevails, but he could at least go to the Sayujya Mukti, that effulgence of Krishna around the spiritual planets. So he got a transcendental time out, right, to get over all his envy and then come back and get it right the next time. So now think about it, that if someone like Shishupal, thinking of the Lord in envy, could attain such an advanced destination, what about the gopis who are thinking about Krishna in love? Surely we can understand that they would attain an even higher destination. So it's not beyond our comprehension to accept that, they got to the spiritual world. And it also leads us to an understanding that if people want to think that their thoughts of love for some imposter god would get them out of the cycle of birth and death, do they envious thoughts of someone get them out of the cycle of birth and death? Has anyone become liberated by thinking of someone in envy? There'd be a lot of liberated souls. No, so why would we think then that thinking of anybody else in material love would do that, right? So that's ludicrous. We can rule that out. And then Shukadev Goswami establishes further about the super eminent position of Krishna. He is known as Rishikesh because he is the super soul. He is above the ordinary soul, always above the ordinary soul. We have, as ordinary souls, a body that's covering us, but Krishna's body is the same as him. In the same way that no other person can compare to Krishna in that way, thinking of no other person can compare in that way. And Krishna is also known, even more so, as Adokshaja, the one who can't be perceived by our senses. And he's transcendental to us. No material person is on that level either. So again, thinking of any material person is not going to get us the same results. Only the foolish, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, avajananti mamudha. Only the foolish will think that Krishna, the person, is the same as someone else, and I can think of that other person and get the same result. Then Shukadev Goswami says that Krishna is without any material qualities. All his qualities are completely spiritual. Right? It's only appearing again to the foolish that he is like the rest of us. And but we can perceive certain things, that's quite obvious, that when Krishna appears, he appears of his own free will. He's not bound by karma. Right? He's fully cognizant of himself, and he never changes. Krishna doesn't get old like us. He doesn't have to look for the grey hairs when he dresses up in the morning. Right? He doesn't have to cover up the wrinkles with makeup. He doesn't have to, he doesn't have to enhance his appearance in any way. He doesn't die. Krishna doesn't suffer any diseases. We don't read in the Krishna book that he got the flu today, so he didn't go out to play with the cowherd boys. Okay? So these things are obvious. Even if we're having trouble perceiving through Krishna's transcendental human-like form that he's different from an ordinary human, these things should lead us to that understanding. And of course, he never comes under the control of the material potency. Everything Krishna does is in defiance of the material potency. Right? We're subject to it. Krishna is completely in his own energy, where he can do whatever he likes. He can lift Govardhan Hill if he wants. Try doing that. And he can divide into 7 Krishnas to subdue those 7 bulls to win the hand of Nagnajiti. He can expand into 1,008 forms, 16,108 forms, sorry. He can do whatever he likes. Right? He's not controlled like us. So no way can any human being give us the same result as Krishna. And it's so extraordinary, Krishna, that even if we think of him in anger or fear, like the demons, we can still get salvation. Right? What to speak of those devotees who think of him in love? And in particular, Srila Prabhupada mentions what to speak of the devotees who think of him in love and preach his glories. Those devotees are most dear to him. Can we imagine their reward? He says in the 18th chapter that they are most dear. So Srila Prabhupada says that for all the difficulties that they have taken, the austerities that they undergo on Krishna's behalf, right, we can only imagine the reward. And the irony is that these devotees don't care about that reward. This is like the selflessness of the gopis, where they don't care about anything personally. Everything is about pleasing Krishna. So now the gopis have assembled. Right? They've come before Krishna, and he begins to speak to them, and he's welcoming them, but he's testing them. He starts to welcome them formally, something you're not expecting between lover and beloved. How do you do? How can I serve you? Have a seat. And they were surprised. So more than that, he starts instructing them on ordinary morality and on dangers. They know about the dangers. He tells them, you've come here at night, you shouldn't be on your own. There's lots of forest animals. We shouldn't be together. It's not going to look good. You need to go back. You need to care about your families, and they worried about you. And then he starts telling them about Jnana Yoga, about how he's the Supreme Lord and they're his parts and parcels, and that's why they've been attracted to him like everyone else gets attracted to him. Can you imagine listening to all this philosophy there? Right? But then he says something very important, and that's important for all the readers of these pastimes. He's explaining to them the duties of a chaste woman, and how they should be faithful to the husband and all the family members. That if they desire to be elevated to the heavenly planets, they need to carry out these duties to the husband and family properly. Because the majority of the people who are going to be reading about the Lord's pastimes are not on the level of the gopis, so they need to know this. They need to know what their duties are. So they do it properly, and they get progressively purified to coming to the point of the gopis. And he explains about the problems of behaving in an abominable way. And he says that if you think you're attached to me, if somebody wants to be attached to Krishna, let's say they have that desire, but again, we're ordinary people. So what do? Krishna tells them, if you want my association, don't personally try to enjoy me. That's for all of us, men and women. It's better for you to go home, talk about me, kirtan, think of me, smaranam, and by this process of constantly remembering me and chanting my glories, you'll be elevated to the spiritual platform. You'll get to the level of the gopis. And that's what you should do. There's no need to stand near me. Right? Please go home. So this is, Srila Prabhupada says, it should be taken seriously by all honest women, by all of us. And also stresses the point about how he is the center of affection for all creatures. So everyone is going to be attracted to Krishna, but there's a way that this must be developed. Right? It must be developed through kirtanam, through smaranam. And then he says, unfortunately, sometimes a rascal, following the philosophy of monism, again that point of thinking that they can be the same as Krishna, they irresponsibly take advantage of the Rasa Lila to imitate the behavior of Krishna with the gopis, and they entice innocent women, obviously making them think that they could be on the level of the gopis and attain spiritual realization. So Krishna has addressed that point. If you want to get that spiritual realization, kirtanam smaranam, right? Not imitation. Okay. So now the gopis are sad, okay, and they're looking around. They came. The setting is so perfect, so they didn't know what to say. Right? They were silent, and we know in the material world, when a woman is silent, it's a little more dangerous for the guy than when she speaks. So they thought about it, and then they were crying, and then they started speaking to him. They wanted to chastise him a little bit for his sake, because they're coming there for his sake. Right? They want him to enjoy their company for his sake. So Srila Prabhupada also makes the point that they are the expansions of his own energy. Right? So it's described like Krishna, they're like his shadow. So how can they be harsh to themselves? So it's not on the same level again at all. And they plead with him to understand that they're fully surrendered souls. He can't turn away surrendered souls. Here he is at the end of Bhagavad Gita saying, Sarva dharmam parisyaja, just surrender to me. And now they're surrendering to him and he's saying, go, go away. So that's one of the arguments. And then they say, but we know you're independent, so you can do that. You're the independent Supreme Lord. But still, you should not treat your devotees in a cruel way, because the Lord is also Bhaktavatsala. Right? He's always he takes the greatest care of his devotees. And then they say that if Lord Narayan, right, accepts all his devotees, right? Lord Narayan is a little more strict, a little more formal. If he accepts all his devotees, then how can you? They praise him, they praise his instructions, because those instructions are the highest dharma, the instructions that he gave them about womanhood. But then they also know that they are beyond that. It's Krishna's duty to mention that those rules of dharma, because that's how we get to the level of the gopis. But they're already at that level, so the dharma doesn't apply to them. And so they want him to understand that they're a little different. And then they tell him that all those family members that he wants them to go home to, those family members are only attractive to them because he's the super soul within them. He is the attracting factor in the hearts of everyone. We need to love him and love everyone through him, and not the other way around. And so they say that he's the most dear personality. Then they tell him that he is the ultimate husband, as we stated, and that if someone surrenders to him as a husband, they will never lose him in any way. Right? They will always have that eternal relationship, and so they will always be happy. So this is also in their interests now. And that if the religious principles say that one should worship his lotus feet, then that's what they've come to do. They've come directly to take shelter of his lotus feet. And then they state from Bhagavad Gita, right? They know Shastra, they know everything, right? They're the most advanced souls. They just appear like simple village girls. Right? Bhagavad Gita 5:29, that Krishna is the ultimate enjoyer, the proprietor, as well as the only friend. So they're coming here to offer themselves for his enjoyment. They're coming here so that he can be the proprietors over their being. They're coming here to experience his friendship. So we can understand these are very beautiful sentiments, and these sentiments are glorified, right, throughout history. There's mystic poets, right, the sons of the Bhakti Marg, even in mystic traditions like Sufism, Gnosticism, people are describing this, and we enjoy it. We like reading about these things. So it's interesting that people are actually thinking badly of the gopis for it. It's the same sentiment. The difference is that they're just getting to express it to God. When other people do that, right, others who want to be united in love with the Supreme Lord, like many eminent personalities in cross cultures, right? Kabir, the saint, Mirabai, Andal, Rumi, right? There's many persons who are expressing the same feeling. We don't think anything badly of it, right? It's the same feeling that the gopis are expressing. And the trend of all these personalities was that they left everything behind for that experience of that oneness in love with God. All of them were renunciants, more or less. Right? So they did the same thing. The gopis did the same thing. So they're pleading with Krishna to understand this, how giving up everything for him makes more sense, right? Not the other way around, that their relationship with him is actually what is real. And then they make a very important point, that even if they go back to family relationships, those don't offer real happiness, nor do they offer real security. Right? This is what we also need to realize as conditioned souls. Although the father and mother are expected to protect the children, there are many children who are suffering for want of food and shelter. There are many good physicians, but when the patient dies, no physician can revive him. There are many means of protection, but when one is doomed, none of the protective measures can help. And without your protection, the so-called sources of protection simply become sources of continued distress, continued birth and death. Right. So then they continue to say that they're beyond the material duties. Right? They can't even move to go back. Their bodies are just for Krishna. Their legs don't have a power to go home. They've lost all ability to engage in any other relationships with anyone else. And this is another important point. If it was just about lust, then what would be holding them back then? Because then they could just express it with their husbands or anyone else at home. It was not about lust. It was about the purest love that they could only express with Krishna. Love that was so pure that they weren't interested in whether that was experienced in a physical way. They were prepared to wait for their next lifetime. That's what they tell Krishna. If you send us back now, we'll just wait for you till our next lifetime. So lust must be satisfied immediately. Love is patient. Real love. The next point is about the goddess of fortune, that she resides on the chest of the Lord. She has such an elevated position, but she desires to be at the feet of the Lord. Because when one is at the feet of the Lord, one can never be moved from that position. When on the chest of the Lord, the goddess of fortune has to go. She has to sometimes attend to her followers. But Tulsi Devi is at the Lord's feet, she doesn't move. Tulsi, we have our experience. Tulsi is on the feet of the Lord every day. So they want to be at his feet. That's their humility as well. And they even say they don't want to take the position of the goddess of fortune as the wife of Krishna. They just want to be his maidservants. So this brings us to the point why it's them that is fulfilling this Parakya Rasa for Krishna. He is the Supreme Lord. So he can enjoy this facet of love if he wants to, because he knows how to enjoy it in a pure way. Okay? He's exploring, he has married wives like Lakshmi Devi, like the consorts of Vrindavan, Dwarka. But if he wants to express this love with his pure devotees, he can. And the gopis are uniquely, they're meant to be part of this relationship because they are the ones who will give up everything for that relationship. This is why they are saying that they are there to fulfill this desire. Right? This is why they care about Krishna's enjoyment of this, because it's only them who can do it. Right? That's what they prayed for. They prayed for Krishna to be able to experience this which he wanted with these devotees who were the only ones who could fulfill this. Okay. By stating him as the Supreme Lord, they're also invoking the fact that he can do no wrong. God is the absolute truth. Right? There is nothing less in him. Okay. And then the last and very important point here is that they came before him ornamented, they say. But he is the ultimate addition to that ornaments. Meaning that we can have everything, but if we don't have Krishna, these things mean nothing. So they're saying that everything about them, all those decorations, even the extraordinary beauty, if it's not for Krishna, then they're incomplete. Very beautiful sentiment. So then they appeal to Krishna that either way, they're meant to be enjoyed by him like all people are. We're all Prakriti, whether we are male or female. And that he has come to Vrindavan to protect the citizens, right? He came to kill the demons. He came to kill Kamsa. That's one of the most famous demons. So he must give them protection now. He must allow them to. He must protect them from their distress of not having his association. So with that, Krishna is convinced. Okay? So they start to enjoy their pastimes, but the gopis, they get a little proud. They get a little proud that they have Krishna. Right? He's the most desired object in all of creation. And what does Krishna do? He disappears. And this is a nice point to close on. Right? Krishna is renounced from everything. Even amongst thousands, or Prabhupada says even like millions of the most beautiful girls in all of creation, he disappears. He wasn't attached to them when he was with them, and he's not attached to them when he disappears. He's not attached to anything. And it's the ultimate platform of renunciation. This is the platform, Prabhupada says, in which all Krishna's pastimes are enacted. Right? And we can understand how it would be appealing. Right? If you have somebody who's very rich but they're like so miserly, they don't have an attractive personality. Right? But somebody who's rich but doesn't care for those riches, right? We find that appealing. Right? Somebody who's beyond what they own. This is the Supreme Lord. He's beyond everything. So even the gopis couldn't attract him physically. We know it was his love, and eventually he'll return their love, and he will return to them because of that. But that is the only attractive feature here. Right? Krishna is otherwise the ultimate renunciant. Okay. So thank you all for your kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki. Yeah. Are there any questions or comments? Anything I can clarify? Anything needs to be corrected? If nothing, thank you again. Hare Krishna.